Friday the 13th started off as a low-budget knockoff, a simple plan to ride the wave of popular horror trends at the time. And yet Friday the 13th grew into one of the most iconic horror franchises of all time. 12 films, over 4 decades, with one machete-wielding maniac that would become a pop cultural icon, Jason Voorhees. In this video, we're exploring the Friday the 13th series, how it began, how it became a staple within the horror genre, and how Jason became the face of cinematic terror. When Friday the 13th debuted in 1980, the slasher genre was still young. Halloween had made the biggest impact in 1978 and had stunned audiences with its simplicity. Producer Sean S. Cunningham saw an opportunity and made no secret of it. He wanted to make a fast, cheap slasher that would capitalise on Halloween's success. There wasn't a master plan. The title came first and the plot came a very distant second. The cast was unknown, the budget was tiny, and the tone less atmospheric dread and more bloody spectacle. What made Friday the 13th stand out was its focus on gore. While Halloween built its franchise on tension, Cunningham brought in Tom Savini, the master of gore, to make the kills the standout and most prominent element of Friday the 13th. It would be a trait that worked immensely well for this franchise. It became a box office smash. From a budget of just over $550,000, it grossed $60 million worldwide, and a franchise was born. But there was a twist with Friday the 13th. Although the killer was earmarked as Jason, they did something a little bit different. They created a new killer. It was his mother, Pamela, who was the killer in the first one. It was a clever reversal that shocked audiences and came as a real surprise. It gave the first film a unique identity, but it left the door open for something different, something more.
Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
Just a year after the release of the first Friday the 13th came Friday the 13th Part 2, and it introduced Jason as the killer, a grown-up child who somehow survived his drowning, never explained, but it doesn't matter, and now lives in the woods wearing a sack over his disfigured head. Jason took up his mother's murderous mission with glee. By Part 3, he would find his hockey mask, something that would make him an icon amongst horror film fans and become a staple of the franchise. The slasher icon was born. Other slashers of the era had decidedly human killers. Michael Myers, while silent and masked, had a defined personality and a tragic backstory. Freddy Krueger arrived a few years later, and he was more charismatic. He liked to taunt and talk to his victims, giving him much more of a personality. Jason, however, was different. He didn't talk, he didn't run, he didn't play games, he simply showed up and killed relentlessly. He wasn't a stalker, he was a force of nature. This helped Friday the 13th carve its way into the niche of the genre. It wasn't about atmosphere, it was about brutality. It wasn't about subtlety, it was about spectacle. And audiences kept coming back for more. By the mid-80s, Friday the 13th had become a well-oiled machine, following a very familiar rhythm. Isolated setting, horny teenagers, Jason stalking and killing his victims one by one, a final girl showdown, and a resurrection tease at the end of it, or a fake-out ending. It was predictable, but it was part of the appeal. Fans came for the formula, they came for the creativity of Jason's kills, they came for his presence and his unstoppable nature. In 1984, we got Friday the 13th, the final chapter, an entry that would introduce Corey Feldman to the world and would give Jason one of his best cinematic deaths. And it's quite well regarded, often cited as one of the best of the franchise. In 1986, we would get Part 6, Jason Lives, where it would turn Jason into a more zombie slasher character, eking into the supernatural and creating a lot more fun within the series. In 1988, we got Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, which would pit Jason against a telekinetic girl similar to Carrie and have an incredible showdown. Silly, self-aware and eking into more absurdist entertainment. Other slashers tried to tell stories. Friday the 13th just gave the fans what they wanted. Jason and complete and utter carnage. By 1989, the franchise was starting to run out of steam. We got Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Budget cuts, franchise fatigue had set in, and despite the title, most of the film was spent on a boat, not in Manhattan. The fans were a little bit disappointed with this one, but the final sequences in New York are particularly special. In the 90s, the series was passed from Paramount to New Line Cinema, and it wouldn't be until 1993 that we'd get the next in the franchise, Jason Goes to Hell, where they would try something radically different. Jason becomes a body-hopping demon in this one. It was bizarre, it was convoluted, and barely featured him in his iconic form. Still, it ended with one of the series' most iconic images, with Freddy's glove reaching out of the ground and pulling Jason back to hell. After the disappointment of Jason Goes to Hell, it had to wait 8 years before we got the next Friday the 13th film, Jason X in 2001. And where else could you take Jason after he'd killed just about everybody, after he'd even visited New York? Well, there was still one place for Jason to go: space. It was ridiculous, self-aware and oddly fun. With a new chrome mask and incredibly futuristic setting, Jason X embraced the absurdity of the franchise. Freddy vs. Jason in 2003 finally delivered on a decade of hype. Directed by Yoni Yu, it blended the dream logic of Nightmare on Elm Street along with the brute force of Friday the 13th. Fans got exactly what they wanted: violent, stylish showdown. It was a hit. Unfortunately, it didn't lead to more sequels. 2009 was the era of the reboots, and Friday the 13th got its reboot in 2009. Directed by Marcus Nispel, it tried to modernise the story, combining the first 3 story arcs. We had Pamela Voorhees, we had the sack mask, and we had, finally, the hockey mask. Jason was more intelligent, more mobile, a survivalist who set traps and ran after his victims. The film was commercially a success, but the fans and the critics had a mixed response to it, and legal battles over the rights to the franchise halted any sequels. To this day, there's still been no follow-up. So what made Jason Voorhees stand out amongst other horror icons? We get to see him evolve on screen. We see him from a small child, morph into a hillbilly slasher, then devolve into a zombie slasher, and ultimately becoming Uber Jason as a science fiction monster. He never spoke, but his presence in the films said everything it had to. His hockey mask became a universal symbol of horror, while Freddy relied on dreams and words and Michael on mystery and silence. Jason represented raw, relentless death. He wasn't lurking in the shadows, he was coming straight for you. Even with no film in over a decade, Jason remains a fixture in pop culture entertainment. Costumes, collectibles, fan films, video games, his legacy continues because of how unforgettable the films made him. Friday the 13th may have started as a shameless cash grab, but it gave us one of horror's greatest monsters. 12 films, hundreds of kills, and countless imitators. Friday the 13th didn't reinvent horror, it redefined it. And through it all, Jason became more than just a killer. He became a legend. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this retrospective, hit that like button, subscribe for more horror history, drop a comment with your favourite Friday the 13th film, and remember, never go camping near Crystal Lake. Definitely don't get lost in the woods near it either.